Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on Stova Event Builder Part 2 about the registration module. Today we're going to focus on the categories feature and the Attendee Info feature. I'm your host and trainer today, Steve McGillivray. I work in the Office of University Events and Protocol. I'm one of two account admins here at ASU that manages Stova for the university. Now, as I was preparing for today's webinar, it occurred to me that starting with categories and attendee info is a great way to see the power of Stova as you start enabling these features and leveraging these features, how they can work together to give you a lot of control on customizing your registration site. So as usual, we have a lot to cover, but I don't think we're going to take up the entire 90 minutes, but lots of time to explore these features in this deep dive and answer any of your questions. So first, a little housekeeping. As you may have heard at the top when you came in, that this session is being recorded and a link to the session will be sent to you a few days after this is over in an email. As we go through our demonstration, you might see some other company names besides Stova. You may see Aventry, you may see eTouches. The company's name has changed over the term of our contract, but it's the same platform we have been using since the beginning in 2017. And as I go through, you're free to ask questions either by posting them in the chat or simply unmuting your microphone if you want to interrupt and let me cover something that we're displaying right away, or there'll be time at the end of the presentation for final questions. All right. So, as I said, we're covering categories and attendee info, and there's a lot in these features. We're going to be talking about direct links. These are URLs that are created with categories that allow you to send attendees directly into a category. Categories can also have subcategories. I like to tell folks that categories are the first question you're asking your attendees when they come in. Who are you? Subcategories could be the follow-up question, again, for multiple purposes. And we'll also talk about how categories can be used well in other parts of the system, such as registrant rules, modifications, and waitlisting. And the other portion of our webinar today are attendee info questions, which is what you use to create the form that your attendees will fill out during the registration process. What questions do you have for them? We're going to talk about two different types of fields that are available in the system, account level and event level, and what's the difference between those two. We'll demonstrate how to add questions to the form and how to rearrange questions on the form. We'll also talk about the different types of questions that you can use in the form, and if you have the need for follow-up questions called conditional questions, we'll talk about those as well. So, an exciting, jam-packed webinar, as always. This is the use case that we are building out in this Event Builder series. Okay, it's a multi-day, multi-session conference, and today, where we'll see our features reflected in this is, one, it's a worldwide audience. I'll need to ask some attendee questions from that audience if I want contact information. I'm going to be using categories to keep track of the attendees, exhibitors, and sponsors as they go through our system. And again, just because it's not complicated enough, I'm going to show how I can have a category that follows up by saying they can have additional attendees as part of that group. Okay, so let us dive in and first talk about categories. Well, what determines if you should use a category? If you use our ASU template, you'll get one off the bat called General Admission. We always suggest you have at least one category. It's a lot easier if you need to use additional categories later in registration. Even if you've gone live, it's easier to do that if you have at least one where people have already started being designated as that category. But as you're designing your registration site, think about how you want to track people as they come through the registration site. How do you want to separate them and for reporting and for other purposes, or for sending event emails? In my example, I'm going to be sending emails to attendees, but also to exhibitors and to sponsors. So when they get the confirmation, perhaps I want to have different messages for those different types of people coming into my system. You can also control what people see in the system using categories. What attendee info questions are you asking certain groups? What sessions can they see if you're using the agenda and sessions or options? What merchandise or other final questions are you asking? You can also use categories for setting different fees for people based on those categories. And the visibility of headers and footers on the registration site itself. Once they answer that first question, you can display different messages based on that category. And if you're ever considering using the Stova mobile app, which is a premium add on feature, we can also use categories to control a lot of the information that syncs from your registration site into the mobile app. So keep those kinds of things in mind as you start to design your site. Some common examples here at the university, especially, perhaps you want to know from the get-go who's coming in as a faculty member, a staff member, or a student. You may have a member non member situation, especially for fees. Members have a reduced price, non members have a higher price. Or perhaps you're doing a summer camp or an outreach program where you want to know the parent or guardian's name first, followed by which students they are enrolling in your program. Doing hybrid events is quite common nowadays, and you want to keep track of who's coming in person because you have a room capacity limitation and you have to restrict that versus online, and you don't need a restriction on that. In my use case, again, I'll be using an attendee exhibitor sponsor example, so I'm getting all those people into the same registration site in order for me to manage them. We've also seen some programs that the first question to ask is, what time period of this program do you want to join? Week 1, week 2, or the specific dates? Another example that you can use for categories. One note about categories is that people are only able to select one when they're going through the system in order to control them. Okay, this is not the place to be asking them a multiple choice question. So keep that in mind when you're creating categories. They'll just pick one on entry. Okay, so let's begin in this normal. I start here at our support site where there are lots of handy docs and this button that gets you to our ASU sign-in page for departments. Just enter your ASU Red ID. And because I have been in the system earlier today, the system took me right into my account. And of course, at the cloud level, I see nothing. So I want to click on my unit. And here is my list of events. And this is my event. And just a little pro tip here. If I was to click on this right here, I'd be taken into the overview page, which it's fine. I have nothing against the overview page. But a little quick link, if I right click, I can be taken to a contextual menu where I can go right into registration settings or any of these other quick locations. Okay, here we are. And this is what I started last week in Event Builder 1, getting the basic details of the event programmed into Event Info basic details, set up permissions and registrant rules and in waitlisting. So now I'm going to head off to categories. Just to get the ball rolling, I've already pre-programmed some categories to save time today, but I've got plenty more to do. So to add a category, well, first let's do a little navigation. So here's the name of the category here. It tells me if I have any subcategories in this center column. Public means, is this visible on the registration page, basically viewed by the general public? And if I want this, this is viewed by the admin, which is you. And then I can edit these categories, I can clone these categories, or I can get rid of them if I've cloned this from a different event and don't need that category and want to adjust. All right. Now let's add a category. And let's go ahead and add one for our sponsors, if I can type. And before I go on, I'm just going to hit save and stay. All right. Now we go into the deep dive. Category reference is just for internal purposes only. So if you have something if you need to put a code in here for your reporting, you can do that using category reference. Category short name. Remember my examples I said maybe you want to put in a week 1 or week 2 if the name of the category is very long, like week 1 is October 31st, da 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 da. That category name, will display on your reports, both on the screen and anything you download. And that can be a little long. So if you want to use a shorter version of that, say just week 1, week 2, you can enter a short name in this field, and that will override the display and export. Users will still see the category name on the registration page, but on your reporting internally, you'll have that short name. The description field is an HTML field in which you can provide a description of the category. Now, by default, this description will be available through a More Info link, but you have the option of having that description displayed from the get-go. I'll show you how to do that in a bit. Don't have to have anything in the description field. You'll notice there's nothing required here. It's just an optional field for you. Okay. Now, the reason I wanted to say before I went into this tour is because this field or this link was created on the save. It's a direct link I was talking about at the beginning, and this is a URL that will allow my attendees to go straight into the category. I like it if my registrants don't have to think too much about what it is. I don't want a sponsor to go to a registration page and have to make a choice. I also don't want someone who's not a sponsor to accidentally pick this category. So my strategy for this is, when I make an invitation to this event for my sponsors, instead of the event URL, which would take them to the general registration page, I'm going to copy this URL and paste it in that register link for the sponsors. That will take them right into the registration site, pre-selecting this category. Wonderful. Okay. Next, maximum attendees. So I can limit how many people can register within this category. And as always in Stova, when I have something that's going to close a registration for part of the site, I also have a field that follows where I can type the message that says, okay, this is full. Okay, we're not accepting any more sponsors. One note of caution about maximum attendees and categories is be careful when you're using these and you put something in the event info max capacity field, because they can conflict. If I put the number 80 here for sponsors for this category, but I say left the limit at 50 on the event info side, the system will shut down registrations at 50. So, rule of thumb, if you're going to be using capacity limits in categories, just do it in the categories unless you've got a really complicated situation. Okay, so for example, in person, as I said, you may want to have a max capacity for the room, but you'll have no event level capacity limits, no limits on the online category. Just an example. This is also something to be careful of when you clone an event that has used these. It's a good idea to review your categories and make sure you didn't have any of these things set up that you may stumble over by accident later. Okay, I'm going to skip the subcategory section for now and come back to that in a minute. I wanted to move down here and see, this is the first time we have interacted with visibility settings in the system. What we're seeing right now are just two. One for who is the person who's registering. A public user, as I said, is the general admission person who's come to the event URL to register. The admin user is you. So you can decide if you want to see this category for anyone who's using the admin registration process. Maybe there are certain categories that you just don't want people to do any through a normal registration process, something special. Okay. But certainly some categories, I'm going to show you that there are some categories I do not want people to see on the registration page. This is one way I can turn that visibility off. Now, because I have group bookings turned on and I'm allowing a person to add more than one attendee to the registration group, then I'm seeing some new terms in this section is turned on. The first person to register is referred to as the primary or lead registrant. Okay, I can use that for visibility and other things throughout the system. Also, whoever is added to their group will be the additional or subsequent registrant. Additional guest is another term. So if there are certain things I want people to see based on whether the first in or the additional guest, I can control that visibility here. I'm going to come back to these buttons in a little bit. I'm going to move down to advanced settings. So here is how you control how the description field is going to be viewed when it's clicked. Do you want, well, when this is enabled. When it's enabled, that more info link will display after the category. If you would like and you have a pop-up here, where you can control how big the pop-up is. I usually just stick to the defaults. If you disable this and save, then the description will display all the time. Okay? You also have these options with categories. You can decide if the category is just available at certain dates and times. If you do enable this, you just enter when the category can be used, what time that start time is, and when is the end date and end time. Now, be aware of something that happened recently in support. So if you set this for a future date and it's the only category you've got, you will not be able to test if it's a future date because you are in the present. I don't know if I can say that more clearly. So if you're trying to test this category, you better start it for the day you're on at least so you can test it. So it did trip up one of our users. I don't need that for mine. Another thing you can do for security, if you would like, you can add a password to this category. Simply click it and view and edit your passwords here. So you want some semblance of security on a category, you can do that. Obviously, you need to get that password to the people who are using it, but one more level of security, make sure the right people are getting in. This last option, adding the category to the event calendar. This is a Stova's event calendar, which is a feature that we don't use at ASU because unfortunately it's at the account level. And such a calendar would show all the registration sites of ASU, so we've just not opted to share that with anyone, so not of real use to us. Now, we're only seeing this section here, group bookings and additional registrants, because I have group bookings enabled. So if you have disabled it or you've clicked the big blue button and gone from scratch, you won't see this unless you turn on group bookings under registrant rules. But here are some features and some options for you. You can decide if as soon as someone registers, they're automatically going to have so many seats added to the registration site. If you find that would be a useful thing for a table 10 sort of sales thing, then by all means have at it. But I want to point out, and then you set up, what's the least number, what's the most number that the group must contain. Maybe you have this for pricing purposes. Okay, I'm going to use this registrant selects this category in a moment, but this is how one way you can control the flow of registrants through your registration process. And you can also decide, again, down here, how many additional registrants are automatically created. Don't need that for sponsors. I'm just going to hit save and stay in case I made any changes here. But I do want to add some subcategories for my sponsors category. And as soon as I do that, so it's just like I've created a new category. They're asking the same questions as far as name, reference, a short name, a description. Is there a maximum to this? Okay, and visibility. And some advanced settings here as well. Okay, I'm just going to save this as something simple. And yes, even a subcategory has a direct link. I'm using an Olympic theme today. And one more. And I've got more limits. Okay, let's just go back here. And so there I can see 3 categories. And what does this look like right now on my registration site? I'm actually going to go to the event URL because when you have multiple categories, that doesn't always show up on preview event. The static view of the site that you can get from the registrations menu. So I'm going to go to there. And this is what the event URL registration site is for everybody. Okay. Now, I don't want people to choose. My strategy is to use this site just for general admission purposes. I'm going to send direct links to my exhibitors and to the sponsors and to the staff. So how do I hide these? I go back here and I can go into edit if I want to, or I can just click here because it's just public visibility that I'm worried about, and hit save and stay. Go back. Right. And so now this is just for general admission. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to show is that use case I had where I have exhibitors and I'm allowing them to have 2 extra sales rep get registered for the event so I know who they are. I want to use the exhibitors category, the first person in, to tell me about their company. So I can put information in the program or in the mobile app. Okay, just company information. And then the additional guests they add will be the exhibitor rep information. So I'm going to add a category for exhibitor reps. Real simple. And I can reorganize these. It's not really a big deal on the display, but it's just my OCD that I want to see exhibitor reps right under exhibitors, just so I'm keeping myself organized. And again, I don't want to see them on the registration page. Lovely. So, first person in is going to be the exhibitor. Let's go in there. And I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom. And now I'm going to use this feature to control who's the additional guest. If I don't set anything here, I will get a list of all the categories that are available, and I don't want that. What I want to happen is for the additional guests to automatically be an exhibitor rep. Now I'm going to hit next category so I can go into exhibitor rep. And by the way, when you use this feature or previous categories, it will save your changes and then advance to the next category. And again, I'm going to go down to the bottom and I'm going to do the same thing. I don't want them to select a category. I'm going to have to be an exhibitor rep. That's what I call chaining categories. So that's the flow of my registration site. Exhibitor goes in, gives their company information. Do you want additional guests? Yes. And then they add the names of their reps. Okay? All right. Now, because I actually have some additional categories, which I didn't have in Event Builder 1, I want to go back to some of those features to show you that you have options there as well. So I'm going to go back to Event Info Registrant Rules, where we had group bookings and modifications. And now I have this option, all attendee categories, where I actually want to make some choices. If I want to see all the categories, I uncheck this, and there they all are. And now I have a decision to make in the planning. Well, I don't mind if the general admission folks add more people to a registration. That's fine. Exhibitors, we already said that's going to happen, and so we'll add the exhibitor reps as well. Staff, sure. Don't expect much, but sure. But not sponsors. Doesn't make sense that there'd be more than one sponsor, right, registering for the event. I can also come down here and is it thought there was a way to decide who can modify. Well, you can allow modifications. There we go. Allow modifications per category is down here. You have to turn it on to be able to see it. So for my use case, I don't mind if everyone modifies. But another little nice control of modification permissions is I can control where they go when they do return to their original registration site. Do I want them to go just to the attendee info page, or maybe they just need to pay something? I can control that here through categories under modification permissions. Again, this is all under registrant rules. And then one final place where you can start using categories is under waitlisting. We're down here at the bottom. Now we have some additional categories to add to our waitlist. Now I'm going to leave this as default. I don't think I've even set a limit. But keep in mind, if I had set an event limit, it would affect everyone who registers here at the event site. If I just put the limit in the categories, then I'm fine. Okay, keep that in mind when you're designing your site. Okay, so I've reached the end of what I wanted to chat about categories. Are there any questions? I'm looking at chat, checking if there are any hands up or if anyone wants to mute their microphone. If there's not, or not at this time, I will continue going on to attendee info questions. And the first thing I want to point out when you land on the attendee info page, first of all, on active questions, be aware there are 2 tabs here. But you're going to notice that there are some fields that have this little monitor icon next to it and some fields that do not. And what you're seeing is the difference between an account level field and an event level field. And first, let's talk about account level fields. So there are, think of account level fields as the data fields in the data warehouse of Stova. So the information there goes into a master database and is used for multiple purposes. There are some fields that have specific programming connected to it, such as the email address field. If you need to communicate with your attendees, you need to use the account level email address field. You cannot just create an event level field, call it email address, and expect the system to use it. That's not how this works. If you need to contact your attendees, you need to have them registered with an email address. So keep that in mind. And I've tried to say this during our trainings, is that I've seen 2 different types of registration systems in general. There's the ticket-based system and there's the person-based system. And the ticket-based just wants to know how many seats you're buying. That's not Stova. Person-based system wants to get information about each person coming to the event, which makes sense for recruiting and for your outreach programs, right? You want to know how to contact faculty, staff, students, parents, students, or children, whatever, right? So you're going to be wanting to ask for the additional attendees and get the email address and at least their first name, last name in your system for those leads. And that's how you then communicate with them with the email address field. Also, just be aware, there is additional features that are available in Stova that some people don't realize for reporting purposes or merge code purposes to display. There is a full name, I don't want to call it a field, but for lack of a better term, a field that is a combination of first name and last name. So you don't have to create a full name field for people at the event level. Take the account level first name and last name, and the system automatically combines those to create a full name field when you start generating reports or badges. Also, there are some additional special fields, and I'll point them out, that have programming to them. Easier to point them out as we go along. Now, account level fields automatically have merge codes created in the system for that use. So the first name field can be used in an email, so it says Dear First Name, right? Um, they can also be used in badges, labels, and certificates when you create them. They can also be accessible in what's called cross event reports. If you've ever explored the system under the hidden menu, there is under registrations a cross event report. You want to find where an attendee and how many different events they've gone to, you can do that through the cross event reports. Also, there is a feature in Stova under the advanced settings called preloaded data. And if you enable this, what will happen is that the system will pre-populate the registration form with any data in that Stova data warehouse cloud based on the email address. So if they've registered for any ASU event, you can preload that data. Okay. So we always close with account level fields, just as caution, is that you may edit the field label, but do not change the field's purpose. What do I mean? Well, for example, we have a title field, and perhaps for your constituents, that's not the term they'll understand. Perhaps you want job title. You can change the label to job title, and you have not changed its purpose in the database. But what you would not want to do is change title to what is your favorite color and then provide a list of options. Then you have changed its purpose. And this can lead to problems throughout the system if people are using that preloaded data, for example. They're going to wonder, why I just registered for another event. Why is it saying my job title's blue? Okay, so use, don't abuse the account level fields. For other fields, you need to create event level fields, and you can create as many of these for your event as possible. The limitations are the fields are only going to give you data in that event. Okay? If you create these fields and clone this registration site later, those fields will be cloned and go onto that site. And if you do need to use the data in a merge field or as a merge code in something such as an email, you can do that, but you have to create a custom merge field in that attendee info event level field. Okay. So let's get into it and show you some examples of all this stuff. Go back here. All right, so we have the email address field and a little navigation. So you have multiple pages. The welcome page is also known as the new registration page. We've seen that here, right? So what I have is a header, which we'll talk about when we talk about theme editor and look and feel. Then we have, this is a field on my registration site under attendee info, and here is the email address field. Okay, that's what we're seeing up here. And then after they hit continue, they go into the attendee info page questions. And we have enabled what we think are the most used fields in our template, which was the basis of this event. I cloned our template. And I can control what fields are visible here and whether or not they're required here. Okay. Now, there's also some fields, some account level fields we have available and have programmed in the system that are not displayed here in our template. If you have the misfortune of clicking the big blue Create Event button and create a non-branded fresh site from Stova, all of the account level fields will appear on the active page. You can move them to what's called the inactive tab. And if you have some fields on the inactive tab you would like to use on the active tab, here is how you move them. So I'm going to pick a field here. All these are account level fields. So I'm just going to take the fax number, which is actually amazingly still used, and I'm going to edit. And down under page format and validation, I can pick which page that this field will display on. And here are my choices. So it's on the inactive tab. Now I can decide, well, welcome page or attendee info page. I'm going to go for attendee info. But notice that you can also create attendee info fields that show up on different pages. Maybe you need to make a little header on one of these others, like the agenda page or the payment page. You can do that. But most often, you're just going to add something to the Attendee Info page. Hit Save and Exit. Now this has been moved from the inactive page to my Active Questions tab, and it's been added to the bottom. Okay, still no visibility settings have been turned on yet. And if I want to move these fields around, I can do that by moving my mouse over to the left-hand side where you see that dotted line, clicking and dragging where I would like that to be. And as always, it's recommended that you hit Save and Save after you make changes, especially before you leave a page. Otherwise, your changes will not be saved. Okay. Now, if I want to do the other way, if I wanted to go from an active question to an inactive question, just the same process, just I would go into Edit, and the page I would select was Inactive tab, Save, and boom, it's moved over. Okay, let's add some questions. Let's add questions for my exhibitors and sponsors. So this is going to be company information. And I'm just going to make a header that has no information in it. It's just there to divide contact information from everything else. So I'm just going to use a simple boldface fine. I can format as you see. Here again, you see that short name. So if my question is long and I don't want that question to display on the reports, again, I can give it a short name. I can also give it an internal reference code or whatever I need. I tend to use the question field up here to put everything, even helper text, but you do have the option of a question footer. Again, I do want this on the attendee info field. And for this question, I'm just going to go with the default heading no input. And here we're starting to see some additional visibility settings, the first being all of our categories. So I'm not seeing any checkbox to select because I'm doing all categories. I'm going to use this, though, just so this shows up for exhibitors and sponsors. It's a heading, so I don't need to worry about required. Public users is fine. Something also that's been new for us here are visibility by the type of registrant they are. Are they new? Are they coming in the first time? Or are they modifying? So you can have a question if you're allowing people to come back to the registration settings. Do you want to ask them a question only when they're modifying? You can set that up. And there we're seeing that primary versus additional registrant option we saw earlier. And one only advanced option here is, do you want to see this on the payment page or the confirmation page? Nah, it's just a header. So I'm going to hit Save and Exit. Adds it to the bottom. Now let's do another one and look at what our other options are for fields. Next, I want to add, let's just add a logo for my companies. And now I want to look at different input types. And here is what is available to me. So again, by default, we're using heading no input, good for formatting, good for adding additional information, or what I call velvet glove if you need to direct people on where to go or what you're asking them. Single line of text is just as it says, or if you need to have like an essay or a longer answer, that would be the multiple lines of text. If you have a question that just is sort of a check if you're doing this kind of thing, that's the single checkbox option. And if you need them to select from a list, but they can select multiple checkboxes, that's what this feature allows you to do. You need to get a full date. You need to get a partial date, just month, year, or you need to get a time. Maybe you're making an appointment. Upload files. So perhaps you need to get some forms from your applicants and you've sent them ahead of time and you have them sign electronically. You have a way to collect those forms using the upload file feature here. And I'm going to use this for my logos, upload image. You also have a drop-down menu and a radio button. So if you have multiple options, but they must select only one, that's what you would use a Dropbox or a radio button for. So again, I'm going to use this for an image, and once I've selected it, it changes the options I have to choose things. So for my file types, JPEGs and PNGs are what I need. Merge fields, why will I do that? Well, you notice there's this file name, so it will change the name of the file on upload, and that could be really handy for me, keeping track of everybody. And I know the merge code I'm looking for. I'm just going to go with the company name. Okay, but if I didn't know what the merge code was, I could click this button, a window would pop up, and I could search for what I'm looking for. If you're doing people, you can do a last name, comma, first name, and have it labeled that way. Lovely. I think this is for the mobile app. If you want a profile picture, these images being used for badging, I think that limits the kind of file it can be. Do you want to allow users to crop? I'm not going to do that, but I am going to give them a size because I just happen to know what size I need for my mobile app. So if they have an image that's smaller than this, they won't be allowed to upload. They'll see an error. As long as it's bigger, either it's got to be taller and wider than I've got here, they'll be fine. Visibility settings for this. Yes, again, I only want this to be seen by the exhibitors and the sponsors. Everything else here is fine for visibility. My other options are to have a merge code. Here is where I would designate a merge code. I believe the program or the system accepts 150, up to 150 merge fields if you need those. I don't need this for logo. Do I want this to show up on confirmation pages? Number of times a single person will respond. I don't expect more than one image to be uploaded, and this is not something where I need to automatically convert to a URL, make it clickable. So everything's good here. I'm going to hit save and exit. Lovely. Let's do another one. Let's just do a website of the company. And for this, I just want a single line of text. And when I do the text option, then I have some additional choices. How wide do I want the field? I usually just go for the default. What can a person enter in that field? I'm going to say anything because I can be, I could use a validation. Well, I guess I do want no, I don't want an email address. This is HTML, or this is a URL. So I don't have a validation for that, but you can see you can make a field that accepts email addresses. That's fine. Just don't expect the system to be able to use it. You can export it and use it other ways, but just be aware this is just to make sure the format in the field is what you're looking for, whether it's an email address, a number, a phone number, or alphanumeric. I'm going to say it can be anything. I don't need minimum characters or maximum characters. That's fine. I could make the response from a pre-approved list. Don't need that. And again, this is just for my exhibitors and sponsors in my use case. Everything else is fine there. I could enter a default value. And for a website, I do like to coach that I need the HTTPS. So when this person creates a registration form, it will start with this. And for a website, I actually add a little helper text to say, please include the HTTPS, because that's what will allow the system to make it a clickable link. Okay. And I'm not going to make that in these others. And also in a text field, I can control how the system deals with capitalization. Do I want to override what the user or what the attendee has written in here with capitalized first or any of this other stuff, or do I just want to leave it how they've entered it? For this, I'm just going to leave it. All right, and just one more. Sorry, my little timer went out. All right, now with a multi-line form or text box where I can get multiple lines of text. I actually can say how big do I want that field. 3 lines is fine. And here I might want to have a limit to how long the description is. Let's just say it's 250 words. Again, visibility, exhibitors, sponsors. Yeah. Da-da-da-da. And just to show you how to use it. So again, if you want to merge code, you can select it here. And when I save this, when I go to a different field, I will not see the option of custom 1. It will go on to whether the next number is. So now the system's pretty good, is that if you use the View Merge Codes button in other parts of the system, it will remember what your question was and tell you, well, that's custom 1 or custom 2 or whatever you've designated. But you might want to make yourself a cheat sheet if you because you can use custom merge fields in Attendee Info and also in agenda sessions and options merchandise. So just be aware. All right. And again, I'm just going to hit save. Now, what you're also noticing is that if it's straight visibility across the board, all options, you can see a checkbox or not to affect that. But if I have selected a few categories and not others, that's when you're going to see the word partial show up. That's indicating that only some categories are able to see that field. Now, I said I wanted to do some work for countries. First of all, I should activate it so people can tell me that. And that's how I make countries visible. That easy. But if I'm doing international, I need to adjust this field. And remember I was saying you can use but don't abuse account level fields. This is account level. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering, you're looking at somebody else's event, somebody else created this event, and you're wondering about did they respect the account level fields? To see what the account level fields that are expecting to see purpose-wise, just hold your mouse over it and it will tell you. So this is expecting state. And of course, state I'm using for mailing purposes or for contact information purposes. So I need to expand this for an international audience. And what I've used in the past, province or county. Okay. Now, this is a drop-down menu, and I know that I've pre-programmed all the United States in here. So what am I going to do for people who don't live in this country? Well, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go into the drop-down options. And I'm going to add another option and call it just non-US. And save and exit. And now I'm going to have that follow-up question, a conditional question, is if they select that, how do I get their state, province, or county? I'm going to add that as a conditional question so that if they select non-US, then what happens? I'm just going to repeat. Okay. And I have to do more. It's just one other conditional question is just like any other field. It's going to ask me, well, what type of field type do you want to use? I just want to use a single line of text, so it's free form. They can enter the name of their country. And maybe this one I'll make into another merge code and see I only got 2. I can't use anything. I can't use 1 again is what I'm trying to say. All right. One thing about conditional questions, so it's set for visible. Well, what's the other option? Required. So I've had this question. How do I make a conditional question? I'm asking a conditional question. How do I make it required? Well, you need to go into the conditional question and set it for required. And if you do that, then they have to put a value in that field, whatever the field is. And of course, you have your options are, is it equal to or not equal to as far as a logic goes. So I'm just going to keep it as visible. But if you must or need people to fill out the secondary question, the conditional question, make it required. That's how you do it. I know it took me a long time to get that question answered. It's like, how do you do that with a conditional question? I know you can. All right, so that's how we've edited a question. One other thing I want to demonstrate is, so we've had some options. How do you program those options? Again, I'm going to hit save and stay. So let's do that drop-down box I showed you before. Whenever you do a drop-down box or a radio button or the multi-select, you'll see a button that says, what are those options? Click there. You're given one off the bat. And you can add these things one at a time. You need to add another option. Just click another option. Boom, there you go. Or you can import multiple options. Now, I have a list. That I already use, right? And because I have two fields here, but they're empty, I want to overwrite what's there because right now that's a null value. It's going to, when I click that, it's going to say, are you sure? It's like, yes, I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. I do. And hit save. And boom, there are my added options. I can rearrange these if I would like. Same way I could rearrange any other field type. I can also sort them alphabetically if I've added some additional options. It's like, oh, I want this alpha sorted. Fine, I can click that and it will do it for me. Okay, and this is another example of using a conditional question where if they say other, and as Laura would like to say, it's like maybe you want to restrict the answer so you're not getting the entire life story in 10 words or less. Tell me what kills you. All right. There we go. Now, what does this look like? Let's go back to our event. Actually, I want to go to preview event rather than fill out a registration form, and I'll make sure I hit save and stay. And go into preview event. Again, preview event is a static view of each of my pages and also based on a category. So now I can see the differences I'm starting to program. If I go into the attendee info, okay, and I'm in general admission, this is exactly what I wanted to see. Okay, I'm seeing that there. Lovely. If I hit other, that's working. Excellent. What do I see if I go to the exhibitors? Okay, I'm seeing the logo, the website, the description that I wanted to see. Lovely. Now, this is pretty good. But I don't need all this information for reps, right? Because I've got the company information. I know who they work for. I'm going to assume it's the same contact information. So how do I adjust this for my flow? Well, I could certainly go through field by field here and adjust visibility for all these fields. Or there's another way. And to do that, you go back to the category. And I'm going to go into exhibitor rep. And now I'm going to use this visible questions. And this shows me everything on the attendee info page. Lovely. So what do I want to do? Well, I've got their email address here. I've got their first name, last name, and I already know what their company is. Do I want a title? I'll leave that optional. Don't need any of this. Maybe I still want a phone number. Maybe I want their mobile number in case I need to contact them about something to do with the arrangements with their booth. Okay. So 2 ways to set up visibility based on categories in the category itself and also on the attendee info page. Let's go back over here. All right. Something just came in my head. What else I wanted to show you? Oh, did we? I don't see my header. Oh, it's because I'm an exhibitor rep, so I want to see exhibitor. Okay, there's my header. I could have formatted this a little bit better. I could have added a highlight so it's, it's in another color. I could add a rule below it. There is something else you can do on these forms. Actually, a couple other things I want to talk about. If you have a really long form and you want to break up the flow for people, what you can do is add a page break. And what a page break will do, did I spell it? Is I gotta show you. Give this a refresh. Go back to attendee info page. It will create a tab for you to better organize your information. Not going to see it so much in general admission, but you will see it under exhibitors, right? So that company information is no longer displayed here, but I click on that tab. So what's supposed to happen is that, and have seen happen, is that if you're using visibility settings based on categories, I'm supposed to be seeing the fields I have here for sponsors, but if I was an attendee being in, I would not even see that tab if they weren't supposed to see those fields. That's one thing I wanted to show you. Another thing I wanted to show you is an often requested feature. Is there a way to delete or to not delete, to reduce the number of duplicate registrations? I got people who come in multiple times and submit registrations. Is there a way to prevent that? Yes, there is. This is the way we recommend. In the email address field, we use that feature that's in all fields number of times that a single response question can be used. Enter 1 and hit save and stay, and they will not be allowed to use the same email address. Now, can they register with a different email address? Yes, that doesn't stop them from doing that, but at least that's one way to pause them. If you enable this, put a value in here, and they try to register again with an email address they've already used, there will be an error message. Not really a very clear message, so if you do enable this feature, I recommend that you put some information, say in a header, no input field that says, if you have received, or if you're receiving this error, you have already registered. Click here to click modify to go back to your original registration, if I'm allowing that. So that is how to do that. Some other requests we've gotten. Is there a way to make this a one-page form? I mean, I don't want people to go to the email, add the email address, click continue, and go to the next one. I just want to make a really short, quick form. Is there a way to do that in Stova? Yes, there is. But to do it, you cannot move the email address field off of the welcome page questions section. But you can move the fields that are in the attendee info page to the welcome page section. Okay? And again, to do that, you just go into that field and select the page you want to move it into the welcome page. Okay? Now, it's not a big deal. If you're using the preload data, that's not going to help you because it needs the email address to go into the next step of pre-populating. But if that's not a feature you're using, then by all means, you could put all this in one sheet, and then when they hit continue, they basically registered and they're done, unless they need to pay something. Okay, then that still requires a second page, or to add additional guests. But that's how you do that request. Anything else here? Oh, some of the other special fields while we're here, and one of them is here called the CC email field. If you would like to allow your attendees the option of sending a copy of the registration to another email address, that's what the purpose of the CC email field is. It's an email field. So if a admin assist is entering a field for their supervisor, they might want to put the supervisor's name as the main contact, but they want to get a copy for themselves to be able to add it to the person's calendar, right? That kind of thing. Or you are having the student register and you want a copy to go to the parent. Okay, to change this to CC copy to email to parent kind of thing. That's a specially programmed account level field. Another I'll point out, it's not active on our templates any longer. It was active back when we first started doing these templates, and of course it's active when or available when you are creating using the big blue button to create an event. Okay, and that is the verify email address field. Now that sounds like it'd be a great thing to do, right? Put that field on there. Usually it's on the attendee info page of the old templates, but just be aware of something. It is not what you think it is. It is not one of these situations where you enter an email address in the email address field and you then put the same email address in this field and hope that the system is checking to make sure there were no typos. It's not that kind of a field. It is a field that's just really a second guess. And the reason we took it off is because we get in situations where people would use the email address field as a secure event, which you can also use. You can use it, and we'll talk about this in advanced features, where you can say, don't let anyone register unless they have an asu.edu domain in their email address. Okay, that's the use case for this. And with verify email address activated on the attendee info page, so the person would register with their asu.edu, and they'd see this field and they say, oh, you know what? I'd rather have this go to my Gmail account. And that would change the email address programmed on the attendee profile. Not necessarily what you want. So it seemed to be causing more confusion than help. But it's a specially designed or programmed field that's an account level. If you want to use it, by all means, but you've been warned. Okay. Some of these other fields you're seeing are specially programmed ASU account level fields for some of the programs of ASU, but again, you're welcome to move them over and use them, or just create event level fields. That's fine too. And I think with that, I've come to the end of the presentation. So yeah, we're just a little bit over the hour mark, so we are going to be able to end early. But let me open it up to any questions you may have about categories or about attendee info. You can post your questions in the chat, or you can just unmute your microphone and ask away. And I'll just keep talking because video hates dead space. I'll go into how if you have questions after you leave today, by all means, here are your options. You can bring it to the Slack channel, post your questions to the hive mind of all ASU users, see how other people solve the problem or what solutions they found. Again, you can go to our website to check out our help docs on the entire system. Send us an email. Happy to answer your questions directly. Our YouTube channel has lots of these webinars from previous years that are still useful and helpful and available to you. We've got more webinars coming up. Event Builder Part 3 is next week. We also have webinars, some more essentials classes. Marketing module is coming up soon. So lots of more information that you can attend. And we have office hours where you can just show up and ask your questions to Laura and I every Tuesday from 1:30 to 2:30. The link to the Zoom is always posted in the Slack channel the day of. And if you have some questions and Laura and I aren't available because we're not 24/7, we're only office hours, you can send your question directly to Stova at this email shown here, or go to the support site through your user account. Click the hidden menu, look for support. You'll go to their website of support docs with a way to give them a phone call or even start a chat with support. So, not seeing any questions, you're very welcome, Danielle. Thanks for coming today. And if there are nothing else, and Laura's not giving me any heads up that I forgot something, so I think we'll call this an end, give you another 20 minutes back to your day. So have a good rest of your day. Bye now.